I think we've made a lot of progress and are heading definitely in the right direction. Hopefully at this meeting, we can continue that positive outcome. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carol here with TWR to give a very brief update on what we know to date about the appointment process through the governor's office for the membership. So Carol?
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't have much in the way of an update on the appointment process. We do know that a full group of applications was received and they are moving forward. And I know that boards and commissions is trying to make this happen as quickly as possible. So I think the fact that they're moving the slate forward for consideration is positive, and hopefully we'll get this accomplished soon. I will certainly update Chairman Riggins if I receive any additional news on that.
Amanda, can you put the first slide, the logistics up there? Logistics. So I'm reminded that I jumped the gun a little bit because we wanted to go through the webinar logistics with you, although we've done this several times. So I think we're ready to do that.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
Sorry. This is Maggie Martin. I'm a management plan specialist here at ADWR, and I'm going to be going over the webinar logistics. Please remain muted unless you are speaking. If you would like to speak, please type your name in the chat. Or if you prefer, you can type your comments and questions into the chat and we'll read those aloud instead. Please make sure you send your messages to everyone in the chat so that they do not get missed. If you have any technical difficulties throughout the meeting, you can contact the ADWR help desk. Their phone number and email are here on the screen. And lastly, this meeting and chat will be recorded.
Thank you. So now, Amanda, go to the agenda slide. So we have the agenda up on the board for all of you to see. We're in the first agenda item, the welcome and introductions, etc. I think we're going to start here. I'd like to turn this over to Natalie to talk about the discussion we had with you all last time about the tiers, the tiered system. And there was a request, and we have a response to your request. So, Natalie, take it away.
Thank you, Director. So we did want to follow up regarding the discussion we had about the tier proposal for the BMP program last time. We certainly have heard a lot of the concerns about that proposal, and we understand that developing that proposal would require a lot of legwork, a lot of analysis about the impacts, and ultimately a lot of time that we don't necessarily have. So in recognition of the progress that we've made here and in other discussions and the compromises that we've made as a part of that dialogue, both with this group and with the Ag Collaborators group and in the Fifth Management Plans stakeholder group. We will be setting aside that concept for further discussion of that concept for the Fifth Management Plan. And perhaps if there is an eventual Sixth Management Plan or some other structure that comes into place, there could be an opportunity to pursue that discussion at that time. We do want to recognize that you all in this group and in some of the other ag discussions we've been having have been working quite diligently to meet our aggressive timeline here. So we very much appreciate that. We appreciate all of your willingness to work closely with us. And I just wanted to note that that was also a factor in our decision here to kind of set that aside and make sure that we're moving forward the Fifth Management Plans along that timeline. All right. So So with that, I also wanted to quickly note something on the Integrated Farm Program. We are continuing to have discussions on the Integrated Farm Program in the Fifth Management Plans work group. We certainly are interested in having additional conversations with folks who are interested in that concept. So we would really appreciate if anyone has any thoughts on the details of that program or how we might move forward with that program. You can reach out to me or to our management plans email, which is managementplans@azwater.gov. So I think, Tom, did you have anything else for the first agenda item? So I think with that, we can go ahead and move on to our next agenda item and jump right into kind of the meat of today's discussion. So with that, I'll hand it off to Scott Riggins, our chair of this group, to lead that discussion.
Well, thank you very much, Natalie. Good afternoon, Director Buchowski, all the IDW staff that's attending this meeting, and all the folks from the regulated public and the interested public that are here to discuss BMPs and try to get us to a finish line on this. Today, we at the last meeting provided the red line version of a first draft amendment of the various BMP worksheet, various BMP items worksheet. And instead of me just going back through that at this point, because it has been out there to be seen for the last 10 days or 14 days, I would ask if there are some questions, either from any participants in the meeting or from ADWR, on any of these items that we have been looking at since this red line version came out.
Scott, this is Natalie. I just wanted to point out very quickly that from the questionnaire that we did post after the last meeting, we do have the responses that we received to that questionnaire posted on our website. We also have the proposals, both proposals that you sent over to us posted, along with an updated red line version of the BMP list. And we do have slides for each of those things, or we can pull those up if needed.
Okay, well, let's see, what would be the best way to do it? Well, let's go ahead and put the red line version up. If we can, please.
We're working on that, Scott. One moment.
I understand. So. Okay.
So, Scott, just a quick note here. You did send us two different versions of your recommendations. The blue text on the screen is what you sent a few weeks ago, and then the red text were the updates to that that we received yesterday.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's go to the first page of the worksheet, and we will deal with both the red line and the blue line at the same time. But if we could just begin at the beginning in category 1. Just to update everyone, category 1 has had no changes suggested to it whatsoever from the finalized fourth management plan BMP worksheet. It is now a 4-point value system. The way the points are established is all the various types of irrigation systems that are not irrigation systems, pardon me, conveyance systems that are in a BMP unit. The percentages of each ones are use their percentage and the point values that are accordant to them to give a almost assuredly a fractional result for the 4-point maximum that is available. Again, nothing has changed whatsoever from what was agreed upon in the 4th management plan. Any questions about water conveyance system improvements? There none being, or let's see, I see there is there questions in chat?
Chairman Riggins, we have Mike Caparosa has commented that he needs to refer to responses for suggestions.
Okay, very good. Well, every time is he wanting to have a response now?
That would be fine. Chairman Riggins, this is Mike. I think I'm up on video. Hey, yeah, on the responses, I was just going to comment. I have a few throughout the whole series of BMPs, but on the concrete line ditch, I was recommending that we take the word concrete out because of other technologies and alternatives such as the HDPE liners that are very effective, and like the smart ditch or other membrane technologies that have been used on farms to keep seepage out of the ditches. So I think concrete was just a little more restrictive, and I think we should open it up to allow other types of technologies to be used as a BMP qualifying point.
I personally don't disagree with that, Mike. One thing that, however, that brings up, oops, we have a little bit of background there. Have we got that cleared up? Yes, seems like we have. One thing concerning concrete line ditches, they last a very long time. In allowing other lining technologies, there would have to be, in my opinion, some sort of a qualifier the way there is in the irrigation systems category that worked into the maintenance and the longevity of membrane and lining technologies. They certainly can be used, and there's been a lot of them used for a long time, but they oftentimes don't have the same life. So in putting it down as a BMP, I think if we were to do that, if the decision was made of a desire to do that, and I don't think that's such a bad thing to do, but you would need to get into some of the aspects of how often it has to be done, how they are deemed to be still in good shape. One nice thing about concrete line ditches and underground pipelines, usually they are almost generational in their lifetimes as far as their lasting. So I would certainly say that this is something that would be a good idea to discuss. I don't know if we want to fully flesh it out right now. Is this something that we can put on a list, Natalie, of things that we need to give a little bit more time of discussion once we get through the main portion of the meeting?
Sure, and perhaps a simple way to address that might not require additional time would be to say something along the lines of concrete lined ditch or technology that performs equivalent or better to concrete. So we wouldn't necessarily have to be specific about it.
Well, if we said that, that would certainly take care of all the issues as far as longevity of other systems. but some of the people that want to use some of those other systems might not be satisfied with it because that would eliminate some of those things.
Well, if I may jump in again, Chairman Riggins.
Yes.
Personally, I think concrete line ditches are the standard. If they're properly maintained, yes, they're great. I was involved with a USBR study on seepage losses on ditches, and we discovered, of course, dirt ditches and concrete line ditches in poor repair are very, very leaky. And as an alternative, I researched some of the alternatives of some of the polypropylene. I'm not suggesting rubber liners by any means, because they're very problematic. But there's some technologies out there that seem to convey water extremely well, that have a very high UV resistance. They last probably as well as a concrete line ditch would under normal conditions. They don't crack, they don't break down, they don't leak. I'm just saying that if somebody were to come to the department and suggest that, hey, look, I've got an alternative here, can you consider it as a BMP? That's basically the door I was trying to open up, not to make it a call, just a call out for anybody that thinks they have a good liner system. So it would have to be sort of an approved engineer design, verified, certified type of design. Maybe I'm complicating this a little too much. Just that I've seen so many concrete line ditches in my life that are pretty bad. And unless there was some kind of a maintenance requirement for the concrete line ditch, which again, we're getting into another maintenance avenue and possible BMP, and again, complicating this maybe a little too much. That's just what popped into my mind. And I don't want to get hung up on this. As a matter of fact, I think concrete line ditch is the standard of the industry, and 99% of the farms are going to be using that. So unless somebody else has other comments or other suggestions, I'm willing to just let it ride.
Well, Mike, Natalie had a suggestion to allow some of these concepts by using that at least equivalent to a concrete ditch. Would that be a good way to take care of it at this point in time, in your opinion?
Yeah, that would be fine, except I'm a little concerned about who's going to be evaluating that. We don't want anyone going out and getting, 1 mil plastic from Home Depot and calling it a liner. It has to be an approved, I would think it'd have to be a valid, approved type of membrane or plastic or HDPE liner that would be effective. I wouldn't want to open the door up to insufficient liners, but
So
back to you
Mike,
on that.
oh, sorry. I think another thing that we could possibly do, something we've talked about adding into category 2 as well, is the opportunity to have substitute practices. So this type of structure already exists in category 3 and 4, I believe. And we had talked about adding the option for substitute practices where an individual could request that the department allow points for a certain practice. So perhaps that's something we could add into category 1 as well.
Go ahead, Director Brzezowski.
So we've had some good conversation. I think we're 99% of the way there, I believe. If we can work with you offline to pump up this language that's proposed here on the screen and post it and get it out to folks for their comment, I think that would be really helpful. And then we can move on to the next category. I'm not trying to stifle the conversation, but I think from what I'm hearing, I haven't heard any negative reaction to the changes we suggested. And I think we're getting into the wordsmithing right now. And let's do that in a way that we save everyone's time and work with you on some wordsmithing that we can get out there. that work?
That works for me just fine. I think that's an excellent idea.
Very good.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, let's go ahead then and move into category 2, farm irrigation systems. The BMP 2.1 through 2.4, these BMPs were actually changed from the third management plan to the fourth management plan and had their point values reduced. It has been proposed in this that point value reduction in these systems go forward into the fifth management plan. These are lesser efficient and conservation-oriented designs, and that was probably a good point in time to do this. BMP 2.5 is exactly as it was in the third plan. There's been no change with that, and it's also that way in the fourth plan. BMP 2.6 had remained the same, but we had in some regulated community meetings discussing various things. It was pointed out that the original language in the third management plan BMP actually missed a point, and it's not that it's a technical point. It's just actually flat incorrect. In current sprinkler systems, the issues that create large droplet size and therefore reduces evaporation and creates greater conservation and efficiency is the pressure at the nozzle. There is no conservation or efficiency in application that is any way related to pressures that are within the delivery main lines. This was written that way 15 years ago, and no one noticed it until a meeting that I was in Tuesday of last week, and I looked at it and I said, yeah, sure, you're exactly right. What's in the main line is not what's going through the nozzle, because each nozzle has a regulator. So this change in 2.6, it doesn't change anything other than the fact that it identifies correctly where the efficiency and conservation needs to be measured in a sprinkler system, and that's at the nozzle. So that's where we are on 2.6.
Chairman Riggins, this is Director Bashowski.
Yes.
This makes logical sense to me. I don't have the expertise that you have in regard to these systems. But unless we hear, I guess, from other members of the committee that this change is not appropriate, I'm supportive of this change.
Thank you very much. And actually, I had a large number of people in the sprinkler community pressed me on how this escaped this way for as long as it did. And I made the comment, well, sometimes when a rock is never picked up, you don't know what's underneath it. And that was the case here. This just got in and no one ever really realized what it was. But as we're going through this and really examining things, they saw it. So I'm the same opinion as you are. If we don't hear anything here, we just go ahead and move on. And I don't see anything new in chat, so I am going to continue to move on. And BMP 2.7, that was a new BMP, and of course, the numbers don't correlate anymore because since new things have been inserted, we just need to look at what the blue line is. BMP 2.7 was an entirely new BMP. It did deal with low pressure sprinkler systems. There we have, we've taken out the high end of the main line, put nozzle in. What it did was it recognized a few inadequacies of design and system that can be in sprinkler systems. And if they were present in a low pressure system, it meant that that system got 2 points. As we proceed down, we'll see that if the disqualifying concepts are removed, then low pressure sprinklers go up to 4 points. We have the same situation down in BMP 2.8. There are certain disqualifiers, certain aspects that cause lesser conservation, lesser efficiency. They've been addressed as disqualifiers, and same with the sprinklers. There is a remediation of these disqualifiers that gets it back up to a 4-point system that's further down in the BMP number lineage. So having gone through those two, I'll look and see if anything comes up on chat or anybody wants to have anything they say at this point in time.
Thank you, Chairman Riggins. I have a question here. Dan Lander has a question with AZ Cotton. Dan, you're welcome to unmute yourself now.
Mr. Chairman, Dan Thielander here. Excuse me. I have a lot of issues with 2.8. Number one, any installed drip tape or drip lines that are over 10 years old. The biggest problem, as we all know, with drip systems is gophers. And the first year you install drip tape in central Arizona, you're out there fixing leaks from gophers. There's no difference between a maintained system in a year as it will be in 10 years. These systems could last 20 years or longer. It's hard to know. That's a very arbitrary number in my opinion, and it has nothing to do with how well the system's working. Number two, a system to visually thorough pressure management. We're out there running these drip systems. We want them to work. We're trying to produce crops. So that just, I don't know exactly even what number two is. Number three, organizational policies for management and labor that assures they're checked and repaired within 6 hours. You know how farms work. You get to things when you can, and sometimes they're fixed within an hour, and sometimes if you make a change on a drip system at 6 o'clock at night, it might be the next morning before you get it fixed, but we're still out there fixing leaks. We took out all of our automatic field changing computers to automatically change the field because we had to have people out there fixing leaks. So they can go make a change and then they fix leaks when they occur. They happen all the time. I just think this is, all of this is unnecessarily going to make it difficult for us. We're putting in a new drip system as we speak. And in 10 years, we're gonna have taken care of that thing. And it's gonna be as good as it is in 2 months. So I just, I object to this whole notion of taking an operating drip system and taking 2 points off of it.
Dan, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your observations there. Let me walk you through a few of these things so we can see how this fits in with the BMP systems and how they're being developed to accommodate higher levels of maintenance and management and understanding where efficiencies are. I will state that in talking to quite a few people with drip systems, there are some people that assert that drip tape can last up to 20 years. I've heard other people that have had them that think that 10 years is too much. Heard both of those. One of the aspects, an important aspect of the BMP irrigation systems amendments that have been put into Category 2 is a concept of a substitute practice. One of the circumstances that particular substitute practice BMP in this category has been suggested for that after 10 years, one thing that could be done is a sample of your tape could be analyzed against a new piece of tape to see what the efficiencies are. And if those efficiencies are nominally the same, that would certainly be a very good reason to have substitute points to show that it wasn't necessary in that position, in that system, with the things that were done to it that are over and above what everyone does, made it last longer. So the provisions for those people who may do things to make them last a lot longer is built into the system. Also, the concept of a system that you say a lack of, you don't understand number two. Well, Dan, we all understand that yes, things are all very busy, things are working hard, it's a farm. But by the same token, if there's not a pretty darn good way to make sure that lateral valves are not leaking into tape systems and draining off all sorts of water without anybody knowing it, until maybe you see a large change in plant growth or anything else, then Dan, that doesn't define itself as a highly efficient and conservation-oriented system. There needs to be ways that that stuff can be found fairly quickly. I have on my desk sitting here right now, I have a drone company that purports that they'll fly drones over drip fields at fairly often intervals to check for infrared excess growth that can be seen quite early, and seeing if there's problems along these lines. Again, with the substitute practice, that in itself, in my opinion, would qualify to take the remediation away from number two in non-qualifying irrigation systems with trickle. There are ways then that are in this to deal with these potential problems that do not qualify for highly efficient and high conservation. Now, if they're done, then they are. And there's potentials in here to do exactly that. Now, the last one here, I do believe it's very important to understand that we have heard from so many people what an enormous problem that leaks can be in drip systems. So, you know what? A whole bunch of leaks that aren't fixed for a long time can really make a system not efficient and not have good conservation potential. But a system that labor and management are all working in ways to spot leaks as quick as possible. And I think you'll see, Dan, that in the verbiage that's there, and it says that all visible leaks will be repaired. Not every leak, not the leaks you can't see. These are the ones that are big, the ones you can see. And you have a organizational policy and management hired with their directions that take care of that. And then also, just like every other flood system that there is a requirement, if those leaks are so big that they leave the perimeter of the field, they're truly deemed to be a pretty major leak. And again, these things can be prevented. And if they are, then the system is incredibly efficient and has great conservation, and there's ways to get there for all of that. This does not keep a trickle system from being a 4-point system. In fact, it points to those things that make it a 4-point system. And
well, it's very specific things, and we had the discussion a little bit ago about a concrete line system, and I think it was, a concrete line ditch, and we've all seen ditches that have leaks in them. And I don't know, maybe there's places in here that says if you get more than a certain number of leaks, or your ditch is over a certain number of years, it doesn't qualify as a concrete ditch anymore. I just think these general policies are a lot stricter on the drip irrigation systems than they are on the concrete. I would at least ask to take out number one, You know, sending in samples of tape. You know, is anybody going out and checking field levels? Are the dead level guys having to have a surveyor to go out there and verify that their fields are still level? I just think this is tightened up a lot more on drip than it is on some of the other systems. So I would at least ask to take out that 10-year-old statement. The other two, the 6 hours is a little bit unreasonable. If you had something in there that said leaks will be fixed as soon as possible and will not be continuing to leave the perimeter of the field unit, that'd be better. But when you put in there something like 6 hours, you know, that's pretty restrictive. Like I said, a lot of times folks will change a drip field at 6 o'clock and you can't see those leaks until the next morning. So I don't like writing in something there that says 6 hours and you know right off the get-go isn't going to be practical. So I would ask to modify number 3. Number 2, I suppose, is okay, but take out number 1. I just really, I really don't think 10 years is any type of reasonable threshold. It's like saying you've got to get rid of a tractor when it's 10 years old. Well, some are still running good, some aren't, but I just think that's a pretty high level.
Or a way to test the system in 10 years. Maybe.
Well, Dan, I'm afraid that I totally disagree with your analogy over a tractor that's 10 years old that you need to get rid of. Because in this situation, you don't need to get rid of anything. You can keep it and keep going exactly what you had.
But I'm just saying a year measurement on drip systems, I think is very arbitrary. And so I think that that's a little over the top.
Well, as I say, Dan, there's a lot of people that spoke up that have quite a bit of experience with drip over the years, thought the 10 years was a very good number. And that's the reason why a substitute BMP was put in there. If someone uses a great deal of water amendments, acids, various things to try to prolong the uniformity of hole sizes in the tapes, then indeed there should be recognition for that. And that's why the substitute BMP has been put there. It's there to take care of that. So if you're doing that, it seems to me that it is one of the things, as we're trying to get to the point of assessing where true high conservation systems are, when we recognize places where there's problems, we recognize it and we give a way to solve it. And that's been done here. And I think, Dan, to say that one time in 10 years and then maybe another time in 5 years to take a piece of 4-foot tape and go in and have it analyzed to see where it is, I think a good operator would be getting good information from that anyway. So I'm afraid I disagree with you because the abilities to do the things that you want to do are all preserved here. You've not been given a situation where things have been made harder.
So I think this is an important discussion, and this is, I think, the first time in any of our discussions where we've had very strong concerns raised by an individual, Dan in this case, over one of the proposed BMPs or changes. And I hate to ask this, but I really would like to hear from the other committee members where their views on this are, and perhaps if you're not ready to do that today in this meeting, we do need to hear that, because I think the operating rules, so to speak, of the committee are, we're trying to build consensus among the committee members, and with the public, but more importantly, the committee members. I don't think we're going to vote. We haven't talked about voting to adopt or not adopt changes. But I'm very interested to hear the viewpoint of other committee members, and I'm not trying to pit committee members against Dan or pit committee members against Scott, but this is kind of our charge, I believe, is for us to weigh in and try to see either a consensus built or changes like the ones Dan proposed have the consensus of the committee members.
Chairman Riggins, Director Busowski, this is Brian.
Yes.
I'd like to weigh in here. I tried to do the chat and follow the rules that Maggie said, but I failed. I couldn't get it done. But thank you, Director, for asking me to speak up on this issue, because listening to Dan, and I have talked to Dan about this, and I talked to Scott about this at our meeting last week. I do agree with Dan on the 10 years. I understand what Chairman Riggins is saying, that there's a substitute for it, but everything I've seen in our area, which is, Dan is by far the biggest drip farmer that I know. Everything, they spend thousands, if not millions of dollars on their systems. And, they could last, 20 years. So I just, at a minimum, Chairman Riggins, Director, I think we need to more time to go over this issue and not make the 10-year rule hard. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much, Brian. Looking at the time that we're at right now, we're at 45 minutes into a 2-hour meeting. I would suggest that what we do is we get Farm Bureau to get us a venue to speak again and have a meeting, and the people in the regulated community and any other observers that wish to be a part of it come, and we have a specific meeting of the regulated community and discuss this and see if we can come to an answer with it, see if we can find where to go.
Thank you, Chairman.
That way we can direct ourselves to it and have that and nothing else, and hopefully get it taken care of.
Dan Thielander, does that work for you?
A good path forward, yes.
Thank you. So I'll just ask as well, Mr. Chairman, that as we go through this, if we have any other issues that we have this similar, different points of view on, that maybe that meeting you're talking about convening could address those as well, and maybe there won't be any more as we go through this. But let's hold that in abeyance, and I see a note that the Farm Bureau is happy to do what Chairman Riggins suggested from Chelsea.
We have a note from Chelsea. I'm not picking up the chats for some reason. But
Farm Bureau is happy to do that.
If Chelsea thinks that's a good idea, at the end of the meeting, before we adjourn, let's go back to that and let's get a meeting date fixed on that. So we'll hold that to the end of our discussions, and then we'll get a meeting date in the short term that we decide on at the end of this meeting. Okay.
Scott, Amanda's pulled up on the screen the comments that we received through the questionnaire.
Yes. And I have already seen these. If the participants will take the time, everybody in the meeting will take a quick look at this. These are comments that were made into the ADWR website.
Just as
there's-
a quick summary, Chairman Riggins, the first item mostly just follows up on that pressure at the sprinkler head or main line thing that you already touched on. And the second one, I believe, is just agreeing with some of the proposed modifications.
That's how I saw it too, and thank you for that synopsis. And let's go ahead and head back to the worksheet. Near level systems was a BMP that existed in the prior fourth management plan. There has been a suggestion for modification of near level systems for several reasons. One of the reasons was given was that there really was some technical inaccuracies with its original row falls. And also specific to this point in time, we know as we're losing CAP water, our head sizes are going to be diminishing, and highly flat fields become very problematic when they don't have enormous heads of water to push the water across them. So near level systems have been suggested that their new parameters of slope are 0.031 to 0.06 feet per acre, or feet per 100 feet. For those that aren't used to working with surveys for land leveling, 0.031 on a quarter mile field would be around 4 inches of fall. That in that neighborhood, a little less, about 0.36 feet is what it would be. 0.06 is up around 6 inches of fall, 5.5. So those falls allow lesser head sizes to more efficiently push across fields. Also, sometimes these head sizes are much more efficient in some coarse textured soils that do not benefit from having higher slopes. That's why near level systems have been suggested to be changed in this fashion. Why don't we go ahead and get all the leveling things done, then we'll ask if there's comments on leveling. So let's go to 2.10. Level systems. This is the same definition as before. It has been changed. Before it was 2/10 across a field. Well, that was really not a good way to do it initially, because a 1/8 mile field can achieve 2/10 and still have enough fall to work. A quarter mile field hardly can at all. So in this definition, 0.03 feet per 100 feet means that any quarter mile field would have to have less than about 2 3/4 inches of fall across it. Actually, that is not correct. It's 0.36. 0.36 times 12 is what it is. So it is 4.3 inches. That's a maximum of 4.3 inches for a quarter mile field would qualify it as a level system. So those are the changes that have been incorporated into the level systems. I would ask at this point in time if there is anything, any chats, any comments anybody wishes to bring into that.
Chairman Riggins, Director Rashofsky, so this may be a really dumb question, but you preface the discussion here with the expectation that the heads are going to drop because of the loss of CAP, and I understand that, but are there districts in AMAs that have water supplies in which their heads won't drop or won't drop as much as where the CAP water? And I really ask the question in the context of, if you do have a situation where an existing farm or district is going to have, still have relatively high heads out into the future, are any of these changes going to hurt their ability for them to qualify under these level system BMPs?
Director Wachowski, no, I don't believe it will hurt anyone. One of the aspects of high volume heads, now I can't speak for sure to the far western Phoenix AMA, but I think this applies in the same fashion. I'm positive this applies to the Pinal AMA. The only districts in the Pinal AMA that have 15 CFS deliveries are districts that are augmented by CAP water. We have 4 districts down here. 3 of them are CAP. The other one is San Carlos, and I assure you that San Carlos is not known for its high head sizes. The other system down here are people on independent wells or sometimes combined wells in either HOCAM or San Carlos. But all of these systems are going to be impacted by the dropping of CAP water. Even San Carlos, there is a certain amount of CAP water that's been going into San Carlos, which will eventually disappear entirely. So a decrease in head sizes and a redesign of certain systems that have been put in place is an assurance. You can't run single turnout basins that were designed for 15 CFS to be efficient on 7 CFS or 8 CFS. They won't be efficient. So these redesignings and this water going away, they're both an assurity. I see no other questions at this point on level systems, so we'll move on to BMP.
Chairman Riggins, it looks like Mike Caparoso would like to speak. Mike, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Why, thank you. Chairman Riggins, I have one question, and I think it just needs a little clarification, if not only in my mind here. But on near level systems, we are talking about all irrigation water is retained to the field. On level systems, it provides either all irrigation water is retained on the field or a level drain back system is used. What is the distinction between using a drain back system on a level system versus a near level system?
It actually, thank you for a level drain back system is a system where basically the head end of the field serves as the conveyance. And when you go over each erosion control, drop it into, whoops, we got some pretty good feedback here. Did we get her done? Yeah, feedback's gone. In a drain back system, there generally is not a ditch. There's a basin, a lowered basin at the head of the field that has a erosion control device as it falls downhill from basin to basin. And when the next gate is opened after one of these basins is done, the level drain back system actually will take the extra water that was put in it and actually drain it back in to use into the next basin down the way. So it will actually pull excess waters off of the basin that it was just in. You can see that that requires almost a fully level basin for that system to work. And that's why in the near level systems, there really is no reason to talk about level drain back because it's not appropriate.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll move on to BMP 2.11, low pressure sprinkler systems. This is a 4-point system and we have changed the concept of high end of the main line and inserted nozzle. And it has none of the disqualifying conditions enumerated in BMP 2.7. So the things that disqualified it above, they don't exist here, so it's a 4-point system. The concept also exists with substitute practices, that if somebody has some technology in a low pressure system that can show that one of the remediations can be achieved in a different way than the ones that are listed in 2.7, that would be a condition that can be seen also. So that's where we are with 2.11 low pressure sprinkler systems. Any questions concerning that?
Chairman Riggins, I'm not seeing any questions or comments in the chat box.
Chairman Riggins, this is Director Shotsky. I just wanted to jump in.
Yes, sir.
And this might be the language might be perfectly fine, but the language that says at least equivalent in the substitute practice, just kind of giving me shivers a little bit, given the statutory requirement about the BMPs and at least equivalent to the base program, if you know what I mean. So can we think about either helping us or whoever the director will be kind of figure out what at least equivalent means, or maybe there's a different way to phrase that? I'm not sure, but and we don't have to, there's more wordsmithing, I guess, so we can talk later, but I just wanted to raise that point with you.
Director Bujalski, thank you very much. I see where the thought of what you're saying comes from. I would point out, however, that in this particular concept of a substitute practice, they're not talking about it being at least as equivalent to water savings of something that is done in the base program. They're talking about at least as equivalent to one of the approved BMPs, which already has a acknowledged higher level of conservation and efficiency. So a substitute practice that is at least as good as something that's there, and it's a different direction that we didn't get on the main menu, to me seems to be like the appropriate verbiage.
Scott, I might suggest just changing the word water savings to efficiency. Perhaps that would be a clarification that would help on our side.
And Natalie, for me unilaterally, I think that's a fine change. In fact, I think it's a beneficial change, one that would be better. Will you offer that in, Natalie, on a strike so we can see that?
Yes, once we are able to kind of aggregate the feedback from this meeting and other things, we will make sure to provide a new redlined version of this document.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Our last numbered BMP in category 2 has to do with qualifying trickle irrigation systems. And I would suggest that since we did not agree totally on non-qualifying trickle irrigation systems, this probably should be tabled to be put into the discussion that we've already hypothecated that we're going to have later next week. Okay. You'll notice that we have redlined underneath category 2, a new substitute practice. It wasn't there before. It was in category 3 and category 4, but it has been inserted in category 2. And you'll notice that it not only deals with a new or existing farm irrigation system definition, but it also deals with a different way to remedy a BMP practice disqualification. Both things would have the potential to move point values. Both things would have to have equivalent efficiency to the systems that are enumerated in the main BMPs. Any further questions on that before we move to category 3? Okay, well, let's go on down to category 3. In category 3, the first BMP that has been there dealt with laser touch-up on flood irrigation systems. There hasn't been a change to this. It actually remains exactly like it was, except there is the correct observation that as often these days, it will be done by GPS, or even more so than it will be done by laser. So just a small modification there to acknowledge the fact that we have other systems to do that now. Moving on to the new BMP 3.2, like flood irrigation systems that have the opportunity to earn a point for better degrees of maintenance and keeping efficiencies at a high point, low pressure sprinkler systems have been given a point through an annual maintenance program to where all the wear points that have to do with the uniformity in the system being kept up to a high level. So like any mechanical system, they don't create inefficiencies and lack of consistent application, and therefore a lesser conservation. By doing an annual maintenance regime that checks all those points and changes whatever is necessary, has been given a point. There's a similar concept that was put into BMP 3.3, but again, I feel that it would be not the right thing to discuss that at this point and put that in to the discussion that we're thinking about having about drip irrigation later this next week. Okay. If we'll move down.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
And maybe
Yes,
it's for Dan Thielander as well. So seems like 3.3 should be put into that discussion you are all going to have regarding the other trickle irrigation BMPs. So you have a package of all trickles together for discussion in that meeting.
That would be the way I think would be best to handle it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, if we can move on to, okay.
So just maybe a quick summary of what Amanda has on the screen here. The first comment says that you could add other programs for the irrigation system scheduling services potentially. The second comment is just a statement in support of the changes to Category 3 and bringing up the possibility of additional BMPs in the category. And the final one here is additional context in support of the changes to item 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.6.
Thank you very much, Natalie. We've already gone through 3.2 and 3.3, so let's look at 3.6. Um, 3.6 included just a definitional change. It was originally, when this was written 15 years ago, angled rows and contour farming was felt to encompass angled borders. Contour farming, for those who aren't totally familiar with the concept, is when you take a unlevel slope system and you actually make borders to capture the undulations of grade and create a level border to water unlevel angles. Angled borders, on the other hand, are just exactly like angled rows in that they are either laser or GPS installed angles in level fields that minimize fall and enhance infiltration rates and water advancement. So angled rows, just to keep the definition where and put it in a plain fashion, that's why that particular phrase was inserted into 4.6. The next place, only other place in irrigation management systems, again, is in BMP 314. And that was just to acknowledge that there are other qualified services past ASMET. I believe that's a good addition because there's back in 15 years ago, there wasn't as many, but now there's a bunch. So there's a lot of different qualified services. People probably have ones they're working with already. So that was put in there to capture the change in times and the fact that we have further entities that can help us with these services. So those are the changes we've seen in category 3. Category 3, just to remind everybody, has a substitute practice that's attached to it, and it always has. So we will move on into category 4, the agronomic management practices. I'm looking for my sheet here. Okay. In the original red line, there was nothing in 4, but there has now been 2 blue lines added to it. One of them is 4.8. It has been its definition has been changed to include not only the planting of the bottom of furrows, but also in those instances where beds or borders are now planted in the bottom of. One of the largest incidences of an example of this is when these original BMPs were written, virtually all cotton that was flood irrigated was planted on top of a row, to whereas now the lion's share of cotton is planted on the flat and irrigated over the top of, to exactly minimize the impacts of salt built up and to make the initial pre-irrigation use much less water because you don't have the requirements of subbing to get water to the seed row for germination. So that is the point in inserting bed and border in this, because the phenomena are identical. There is one other suggested BMP. It is a totally new BMP. It's BMP 4.9. I will acknowledge that when this was brought up to me by some growers over on the west side of the Phoenix AMA, that I had never heard of this in my life, but they spoke about it extensively. This actually is something that a person can look up and see this technology, see pictures of it. It's actually more common than I thought. I don't think it's hugely common in Arizona, but it's sure common in a lot of other places. But this is the use of a chemical compound called polyacrylamide that's actually dropped into the irrigation water in the conveyance, and it is a flocculating agent. It actually is used in water filtration plants, and it removes suspended soil. And so what it does is it really prevents, not prevents, that's not the proper word, but greatly reduces soil erosion, and particularly in coarser soils, and allows a much greater accuracy and placement of water and improving soil uptake of water. This was asked for by those folks as a new BMP at a different time. It might have been something that would have gone through the substitute agronomic management practices substitute point. But it was brought up during this point in time, and in my mind, it definitely is deserving of having a look taken at it. And to that point, I believe I'll also point out that category 4s also have a substitute practice point that has been in there since the beginning. And with that point, we have discussed through the BMP's modifications proposed for the 5th management plan for the AMAs. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Director.
So I don't know if there's anyone on this meeting that actually is a practitioner using 4.9. I'd be interested if there is a little bit to hear about their experiences. Most importantly, is there some minimum concentration of that chemical that's necessary to achieve the efficiency outcome that you get to the 1.4? Is that how this works? And I don't want the BMP to get too much down in the weeds, but that's kind of a question I have.
Director Bachowski, I think that in any application of any material or chemical in agricultural practices, or indeed any practices where they're used, there'll always be an optimum and a minimum amount that is needed. I would tend to think that if someone is going to use this for real, they're not going to use a 1/3 rate just so they can get a point in the BMPs. I don't believe that would happen. However, by the same token, I don't think that if we got input on what proper rates are and there was a desire to insert that in this BMP, I don't believe that would cause a problem either. I would ask you for your opinions on what's the better direction to go on that.
And again, avoiding the wordsmithing. I don't think I want a number, but maybe we can have language that says something along the lines that it's put on in a concentration that successfully removes suspended soil from the water and allows the soil to stay in place, reducing soil erosion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. To me, that would be enough.
And Director Bachowski,
number is too far down in the weeds, and like you said, it's going to be variable, but just to make sure we tie the concentration to what we're trying to achieve, which is the last half of what's in red, right? That makes sense?
and I think it makes total sense, and I would, again, unilaterally, because of the logic of your argument, I would see no problem whatsoever to putting that qualifying phrase in what we're looking at in the red line at this point.
And we'll have Natalie do that when she puts the next version together for everyone to look at.
Okay. Do we have any other questions on the worksheet?
Chairman Richards, it looks like Ron Rayner has a question and suggestion. Ron, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Ron's not here right now, but this is Kevin Rogers. He called me this morning and had a thought. Scott, we just want to thank you for all your work you've done. You and the director, you guys have allowed the system to go through, and we're very appreciative of it. One of the comments that we've heard during the discussion is making sure that our growers, they adapt to new management structures, that we make sure we've got ample points for all the changes they're having to make. And Ron called me this morning and said one of the things that he's doing differently, he said, for years, our foremen have talked to our irrigators about, moving our water at a certain time and making those changes. He said, but he's actually started and going to start next week and have a meeting with his irrigation crew and explain to them the why the timing is so important. He says, we've always just dictated to him that you change the water when the water gets to this point in the field. Never really explained why. And he said he thinks that if they understand how important it is that he only puts on the limited amount that he's going for, that they'll do a better job and have a better understanding for why it's important. And so he's implementing on his farm. New hires are going to have an irrigation 101 class that he's going to put on. He said he actually found an old chalkboard, put it up in his break room, and he's going to review with his team the why we're asking him to do all these things as opposed to just telling them. And he says then he's going to refresh them at least annually, maybe twice a year, depending on how that goes. And so I think as we look at the whole pie, and Director, you had said we want to make sure we're giving the opportunity for new management discussions to come into play. I just wanted to throw it on the table for Ron because he asked me to share that as one example of something that he's never done before, but here we are in 2021 and he understands that his employees need a better explanation of why he's demanding that they be more efficient on his farm. So that was his thought.
Thank you very much, Kevin. We can possibly, when we're talking about trickle irrigation next week, possibly we can bring up that in that group and see what their feelings are at that time.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is the director again, and this might be the appropriate place for me to say what I'm about to say, but it gets at what I'm hoping to achieve in the broader scheme here, listening to all of you. And so I love explicit support. Strangely, I love explicit concerns being raised so we can address them. But there's a lot of silence, and so I just want to let everyone know that when I hear silence, I'm not taking silence as support. I'm not taking silence as even acquiescence, but I am taking silence as a comfort level sufficient for us to move on and get to closure. So I just want everyone to understand how I view that. And so, again, explicit support's great, explicit opposition is great because we can deal with it then. But I wanted everyone to understand as I'm listening or not hearing anything, how I'm taking the silence in terms of, in my own mind, if we're ready to move on and ready to adopt, so to speak, the plan.
Thank you very much, Director. Thank you for that qualification. I believe at this point in time, if we don't have anyone in the meeting that wishes to further discuss the proposed amendments to the BMP worksheet, that we say that we've discussed that fully for this meeting. So anybody else that wants to get a comment in, a question at this time before we move on to our next points? Okay, very good. Natalie, where are we in the agenda at this time?
So I did just want to, before we move to the next item in the agenda, want to note that we do have one more item beyond the individual BMPs that at some point will need to be discussed, not necessarily right this moment, but so the current structure of the BMP categories, obviously, as we've been working through the list, you can see that there are 4 categories. Each of those 4 categories has a minimum and a maximum number of points allowed, and the total points requirement under the Phoenix and Pinal fourth management plans is 12. So whether we have this discussion today or in a future meeting, there should just be some consideration or perhaps confirmation of that points structure and points total.
And Natalie, I thank you very much for that. I'm glad you brought that up. I certainly have ideas on this, but since we have not vetted this, particularly with the regulated community, and we have a meeting coming up, I would suggest that we take one more meeting to discuss this particular BMP minimum points among the regulated community, and we have the discussion on this at our next meeting.
Chairman Riggins, before that meeting that you described with the regulated community, is there anything else you need from DWR prior to that meeting that would help you in that discussion in regards to this point system?
Well, yes, there are things that definitely can be pointed out in this. There was a fairly large amount of changes, probably the most amount of changes that occurred in the modification for the 5th management plan in the BMP Category 2 irrigation systems. One thing that was not intended to do in any fashion was to take systems that got 2 points and make them to where they did not qualify to going forward to get other points in the BMPs to get their required 12. So category number 2, farm irrigation systems, that 2 points required has actually been baked into the way that the BMPs in that category are structured. If it was more than 2 points, it would truly require a rethinking of the entire category. Now, category 1, water conveyance systems improvements, personally, and other people I've spoken with, making that from 1 point to 2 points, or even indeed to 3 points, I don't believe would be a difficulty. And in fact, a 3-point minimum on water conveyance systems infers that 25% of the system in a BMP can still be unlined. So I would not think 3 points in category 1 would be out of line, and I don't think it would cause problems to anybody that had systems in place. And I think the potential is there to require some more conservation there. We'll see whether other people agree with me on that, but that's my thought. In category 3 and 4, there certainly is no problem whatsoever, since there needs to be 12 points. There's certainly no problem in category 3 and 4 taking the minimum points to 2 apiece. I think it would be entirely appropriate to do so. I don't believe that, however, it'd be appropriate to take either of those to 3 points, because we have a situation, if a person is very efficient in category 1 and 2, and say has 4 points in 1 and has 3 points in 2 for 7 points, if there were 3 points required in category 3 and 4, we would then de facto be requiring people to have 13 points. And I don't believe that's the concept that we're trying to achieve. So at this point in time, and when I have discussions with people in the regulated community, and they tell me what they think of my coming across and saying all these things before we've talked it all between ourselves, I myself think that category 1 quite well can be 2 or 3 points. I think that category 2 really must stay at 2 points. Too much has been written around it in definitions to change that. And category 3 and 4, I believe would be entirely appropriate to take them to 2 points apiece. So for a person that wasn't going to say what he thought, I guess I said everything I thought.
It will help facilitate your conversation at the next meeting of your group, certainly.
Yes.
So from
Okay.
DVR perspective, we really will be interested in hearing the outcome of your conversations. If you can see fit that some of the additional conservation or efficiency that you described, Chairman, can come out of raising the minimum points, I'd like to hear that. But I also don't want to create a situation where we're going to create a hardship and kick people out of the BMP program because the minimum in any one category is too high. I think that would be counterproductive, and I'm not sure consistent with the intent of the BMP program in the first place. So we had not made a proposal to date on this. So we'll really be interested in hearing back from you all on your thoughts and suggestions.
Thank you very much, and we'll definitely incorporate that in our discussions so we can have an opinion to express at the next meeting. Okay, Natalie, where are we next on the agenda?
The next item on the agenda is just any discussion of our next meeting.
I would say that it would be good for us to have fixed when this regulated community meeting is going to happen before we establish the BMP meeting. If Kevin Rogers or Chelsea McGuire can unmute and we can discuss when a meeting of this nature could happen.
Next week at our office.
Tuesday, Thursday?
Yeah, I've got a board meeting next Wednesday, but Tuesday would work. Thursday, we've already got another meeting. But Chelsea, what do you look like on next Tuesday?
Tuesday would be best for me as well. I am actually out of town to Thursday and Friday, so anytime before Wednesday, and Monday is out for me. So Tuesday would be perfect.
So what about Tuesday afternoon, Dan?
2 o'clock.
I have a meeting in Maricopa at 4, so
1:30.
So
1:30.
1:30.
Scott, does Tuesday work like at 1 o'clock or 1:30?
Tuesday, and that's Tuesday is the 16th, Tuesday the 16th at 1 or 1:30 works perfectly for me.
Dan's got a meeting at 4, so we wanted to try to bump it a little bit. So can we do 1?
No,
1 o'clock.
1:30.
Let's do 1:30. That'll be fine.
As soon as
Okay,
they submit, it'll only take 10 minutes.
Yeah, Dan says once you roll over and give him what he wants, the meeting will be over, so it's okay.
And I will hold my response on Dan's comment.
You're learning.
Well, I
Thank
think
you.
1:30.
Yeah, 1:30 will be fine. Okay.
1:30. Could we get an email out to the large group and get as many people in? Some people that might not have particular interests in the trickle discussion, maybe have some qualifications they want to understand, some discussion. You know, I would try to get as many people there that need some more discussion on this as would like to be there.
So what I can do is I will send out the notice to the group that was at Kevin's office last week. We can send it to the ag collaborators and make sure that everybody who is interested in the conversation knows about the meeting. We'll set it up to be a hybrid in person and virtual so people can participate however they feel comfortable, and that's what we'll get together.
So Director Pachowski, much like when they picked a new pope, we'll be waiting to see that white smoke as a sign of success.
Just
And
look
Scott,
towards
perhaps-
Gilbert and you'll see what you can find.
Perhaps as we did last time, you and I can touch base sometime after that meeting, and that will help us know where we need to go with the next meeting of the committee, maybe what some of the agenda items might be.
This meeting that we're having today is on Thursday. Would it be appropriate to have our next meeting Thursday, 2 weeks from today, the BMP meeting?
What's that date? Sorry.
25th.
We have a decel committee meeting.
From 1 to 3, can we do it from 1 to 3? Natalie?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, the DWR contingent can do it on March 25th from 1 to 3.
That is fine for me. Is there anybody in the audience that causes undue problems for, or can we go ahead and schedule it for Thursday, March 25th at 1 o'clock? I would say that then that is our meeting time. And with that, I will, unless there's anything on the agenda that I need to address, I'll turn the meeting back over to Director Wachowski.
I got to speak from Trista.
So we did just want to bring this slide back up to kind of follow up on our progress in this group. We do, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, we do very much appreciate you all working so diligently to help us meet our timeline and work through these issues in a very fast and timely manner. So as we kind of pointed out earlier throughout the meeting, we do still have some follow-up to do on those individual BMPs, on the total points. We will be pushing out that tier concept for future plans. And beyond those items that we've already kind of touched on throughout this meeting, the final task for this group is to wrap up the BMP committee recommendations. So I think we're on a good track to meet that timeline. Any questions or comments there?
So I want to say something.
Hearing none, we can go ahead and move on then.
So, Mr. Chairman, as we were sitting here in this meeting, Carol got an update from the Boards and Commissions office, from the Governor's office. So we have some additional information on the appointments that Carol would like to share with you.
Yes, thank you, Director. Mr. Chair, I am happy to report that the individuals for the Ag BMP Advisory Committee are going through the final steps of the appointments process, and I'm told we should have appointments soon.
Very good. That's good news. And thank you ever so much to AWR for as much work as they have put into reestablishing and getting this BMP Advisory Committee back in business to where we can be part of this process in the future as we go forward in the groundwater code.
We're happy, if I may, we're very much happy to do that, and I have to give a big shout out to the folks at boards and commissions who have really moved this forward quickly.
So, Mr. Chair, the DWR has nothing more. Natalie will turn around another version of the BMP for posting on our website. We're not going to send out a questionnaire this time, but folks are welcome to forward any comments to us as they see fit. And we will look forward to a discussion following your stakeholder meeting in relation to what we will be ready to do on March 25th. And I'm really happy with the progress we're making. And it seems to me that we are very close to a consensus closure on this BMP program. We have some work to do on the points, but the actual BMPs and the descriptions of them, we're very close to the end of that line. And I think we're in good shape to continue to meet our May deadline. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Director Wachowski, very much for the opportunity to bring this group together and to try to chart a path that leads to the best conservation and efficiencies that agriculture can deliver to help the goals of the groundwater code and make Arizona a easier water environment place. If this tiny BMP committee can ever help that, we've done an excellent job. So thank you very much for all your efforts.
And I guess with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.